Hi, everybody. Welcome to Talking Data Equity for Friday, August 16th. I am so excited to see you. My name is Heather Kraus, and I'm coming to you from the We All Count offices in Toronto, Canada. And you've made your way to what is my very favorite thing that We All Count does each week, which is something called Talking Data Equity. And some of you are here for the first time, and I am very, very excited to get to know you. And some of you are regulars, and we are so grateful for the community that you have formed in this hour on Fridays. And what Talking Data Equity is it's an informal, weekly or almost weekly gathering of anybody who is working in any sector in any country that is interested in figuring out ways to use data that aligns with the values and lived experiences that they are trying to prioritize. And Talking Data Equity is kind of a way to end my week to remember that none of us are in this alone. We're all working on it. We're facing similar barriers and unique barriers, and there are lots of people out there with some very cool solutions. And sometimes we talk about a technique, sometimes we have a special guest, sometimes we just have an informal chat. And today we have a very special guest who I'm going to introduce in just a minute. And the way this runs is that I am going to introduce our special guest. Then we're going to turn the screen over to the special guest. And we're going to ask, because there's so many of you here today, which is great success, that you keep your microphone turned off while our special guest is sharing. But you can feel free to use the chat. The chat function is set up so that you can ask a question or make a comment publicly with that Zoom chat menu set to everyone. Or if you want to ask a question just to me or make a comment just to me, choose my name, Heather Kraus, and you can chat directly to me. And I'll still amplify your question or your comment, but I won't attach your name to it. So whatever makes you feel comfortable and happy. This is recorded and it's shared in our data equity community forum, because we know that there are lots of people that want to attend but just don't have the time at this particular hour. So don't worry, we'll share links to all the resources that our special guest is going to talk about, so you don't have to always take all the notes and stuff. We'll share all that in our data equity community forum at the link in the chat. I'll put the link in the chat again before we are done. Okay, so having the logistics out of the way, let me introduce you to Dr. Alex Gurvich. And I was saying when we were getting ready for this that this was like a little gift to myself because I got to see Dr. Gurvich speak at a different conference and thought, oh, this is so interesting. I hope that this person will come to Talking Data Equity. And here we are. Alex is a data visualization specialist at NASA in the NASA Scientific Visualization Studio. He received his PhD in computational astrophysics from Northwestern University, focusing on high performance commuting and interactive web-based viz. At NASA, his role is to develop interactive data visualizations for the Earth Information Center, which you may have seen on the web as like EIC, which is an ambitious NASA-led initiative to bring federal climate change data to the public through interactive data applications in a dedicated museum and at earth.gov. All amazing organizations resources that we will link to in the chat. Do not worry. When not storytelling with data, he spends his time relaxing with Pepper, his trusty basset hound, who we may get to hear from today because this is his normal walk time. So he may protest a little bit that we're taking Alex's time during Pepper's official walk time. So we'll all be very forgiving of that. Oh, yeah. There we go. Special event. Yes. Hello. Oh, fabulous. See, who wouldn't want to give him a walk or her a walk? Actually, I don't know the gender of the dog. Awesome. Alex, thank you so much for making the time. I have been looking forward to this for weeks, and I will now turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Heather, for inviting me to come. I'm really excited to get to talk about this. So Heather mentioned another presentation that I gave. That one was 7 minutes long, and I barely got to scratch the surface about a lot of the fun things that we're doing at NASA and at the Earth Information Center. And so I'm very excited to get to go into so much more detail and share with you all about this incredible project that I've been a part of. So let me play the Zoom game here. Try and share my screen. And hopefully people are
Perfect.
seeing slides.
Yep,
Yes,
it's perfect.
phenomenal. Um, so, as Heather said, my name is Alex. I am a member of the Scientific Visualization Studio at NASA. We're a team of about 20 data visualizers who we're kind of like internal consultants, I like to refer to ourselves. And we work on different things. We help scientists make their scientific results digestible for the public. And one of our like biggest projects that we've been contracted for over the past, oh gosh, almost 2 years is the Earth Information Center. I guess before I continue any further, I want to give just the kind of standard disclaimer. You know, all the dumb jokes that I make are all me. I take full responsibility, and they don't necessarily reflect the sense of humor of NASA. So one of the first points I want to make is something that I think strikes a lot of people as being very novel and really is part of the core mission of the EIC is to explain that NASA does earth science. We do a lot of earth observation, and in fact a lot of the things that uh, you rely on in your everyday life are under the hood powered by data that's coming from one of these satellites that are in NASA's fleet of Earth observing satellites. We've been observing Earth since, oh God, for like almost 50 or 60 years at this point. And so this is a nice graphic that I like that shows all of the satellites that are currently in orbit and the ones that are planned up until 2030. A lot of them are partnerships with international agencies and other federal agencies as well. Which is a great segue into, okay, what the heck is the Earth Information Center? The Earth Information Center is actually it's a very special word, center in federal government parlance. A federal center, is an actual fancy document that a whole bunch of different independent federal agencies have signed and committed to supporting um, to create and do something new, as mandated by the federal government. And so what the Earth Information Center's goal is to bring actionable data. So this is Earth observing data that's already been, cleaned and processed and made into like sensible terms. So not necessarily, solar irradiance in watts per square meter, but trying to turn that into something intelligible, like how like kilowatt hours, equivalent, and maybe even going one step further and saying, how much money you might expect to save with a certain model of solar panel, like on a grid. And so there's these extra steps that go into creating these really human interpretable, really intuitive data sets. And these data sets exist already. A lot of our federal partners have been creating these value-added data sets, just as NASA has, but there's not really been a place to gather it all. And there hasn't really been a real effort to communicate that to the public, that there are these data sets that are totally open to the public, a lot of them with full global coverage. So we're not just talking about like the US, population here in the United States, but actually around the globe, a lot of NASA data is used because we have satellites, that orbit the entire Earth and can can scan, or anywhere. So, yes, so these are our several federal partners. I want to point out USAID as a little bit of an outlier in some of these different agencies. A lot of them have remote sensing programs like USGS and NOAA. NOAA partners frequently with FEMA, and FEMA will do a lot of work to create value-added data sets. But USAID is a really great partner to have in the Earth Information Center as we try and think about climate justice and how we can take demographic and socioeconomic data from around the world and use that to contextualize and inform some of the remote sensing data that we're making available to the public, or some of the future looking climate model data. And so this lets us, expose data sets that allow people to ask questions like, okay, if the sea level was going to rise by 2 feet or something in a certain part of the world, who are those people that are going to be affected by that, right? And what are their backgrounds? And so it really helps bring an authoritative data focused lens to trying to address some of these climate inequalities, let me say. Okay, so moving on. So the Earth Information Center is an ambitious initiative, I think, that's split into 2 parts. So one is earth.gov. This is an online data portal where people can go and access this data and actually get to play around with it. We have, I will say, it is in a beta right now. So if people are frantically typing earth.gov, you will see that it is not very close to what I'm describing right now. Well, the future plan for earth.gov is to expose about 100 data sets that in formats that people can easily access alongside an interactive application where you can actually go in and do a little bit of just basic analysis to answer some top level questions without having a strong GIS analysis background. The other half of the Earth Information Center is its physical exhibits. So when I say physical exhibit, I want you to try and imagine like a museum exhibit where we are taking this actionable data and creating visualizations and immersive experiences and interactive applications that members of the public can come and experience and then leave with a greater appreciation for how this Earth observing data can be used, not just to help answer questions about how the climate is changing, but also to help address questions that our people need help with today's. Like if you're a farmer, soil moisture data can help you understand how much you should be irrigating your crops, which saves you money as you're pumping water. If you're a small business owner who's thinking about installing solar panels on the top of their roof or something, you want to be able to understand like, okay, how long until these things pay for themselves, or will they even? Just sort of basic sorts of questions that you might not even think that NASA would be the person that you would go to, or that any of our federal partners would necessarily be the people that you go to answer these questions. And so my role at the Earth Information Center is as one of 3 core Visualization Studio team members that really focus on the Earth Information Center, really don't do much else. And I support both the physical and the digital realm of the Earth Information Center. For the digital realm, I'm the technical lead for earth.gov, so that involves a lot of micromanaging. I hope I don't micromanage, but micromanaging some of the software engineers that we're partnered with. down at Marshall Space Flight Center and working with them to try and deploy new versions of Earth.gov and get the data ingested. And also as a data engineer and visualization specialist for our physical exhibits. So that looks like creating the backend that allows live data to be piped to some of the exhibit pieces, as well as creating some of the visualizations that are displayed in those spaces. I'm joined by the other two musketeers, as it were, Brenda Lopez Silva and Michael Chiat. So Brenda is our application engineer and also a visualization specialist. So she's the one who spends all the time turning, these visualization files into something that looks like a dashboard, into something that people can actually come and interact with. And Michael is our hardware and systems engineer who, I was just talking to him yesterday about maybe we need a fanny pack that we can wear with a network switch in it that we can just start plugging cords in so that we can set up local area networks, ad hoc. So he's the hardware guru that makes the whole thing happen. Our first physical exhibit opened last summer, so we just crossed the year threshold. There's a nice official photo from NASA of the NASA administrator with many administrators and deputy administrators from our partner agencies cutting a big red ribbon. What they won't show you is that it was actually raining outside. And so the other photo I have here is one I took from just like, I don't know, 10 feet to the right of the official photographer, where you can see a little bit of the light setup and the rain tent. So that was an exciting day for all of us. There are two more physical exhibits that we hope to open soon. So one at this, so I should say this is at NASA headquarters. So that's in Washington, D.C. It's on E Street and 3rd. And if you come into our East lobby, it's open to the public. And everything that I'll be talking about in just a second about its features are there for anybody to come in and enjoy. There is a security cordon that's a little bit further in that, you can't get to the cubicles. There's nothing fun in there anyway. But there are two more locations that we are on deck to open. So one at the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History, also here in Washington, D.C. on the National Mall. That one's opening October 8th. And, we're in crunch time at this point. I'm feverishly working on a new interactive kiosk application that I hope people will like. And then we're also opening a much larger, much more elaborate exhibit at the NASA Kennedy Space Center Visitors Complex in Cape Canaveral, Florida, on the old retired launch gantry 39. So at headquarters, there are four main components of the Earth Information Center. One, the first one we hope people will go to gravitate towards and start their journey is our immersive projection room. So I want you to imagine, we call it a cave. I want you to imagine like a big dark box with projectors on all the walls and on the floor. And so we have a 7-minute show where you can come in and see data fly past you. It's narrated by two former astronauts. And, I think the goal is to really be emotionally evocative, to make people fall in love with Earth. And it starts with a picture of Earth from space and talks about the overview effect and, how all of the conflict on Earth just, it seems small and meaningless when you see this fragile place, the only place that we know of in the universe that hosts life. Yeah, just kind of surrounded by this hostile vacuum. So just gives you some perspective. So we want to give people a little bit of that same perspective and show them how NASA and its federal partners are collecting data that can impact people in an actionable way. So once they're primed by the immersive exhibit, Space for Earth, we invite them into the rest of the lobby where they can see what is a data sculpture. So the Earth Pulse is this giant chandelier whose LEDs, they move vertically along, representing the flow of data between Earth observing satellites and the ground stations that communicate with them. And so it'll cycle through different missions and show you how some of the older missions that we're still flying is a great investment to put some of these things up there because they can last decades. That the data transfer rate is so much slower just because of the older hardware, versus some of the newer missions where it's just we're being flooded with data just raining down from the sky, which is it's just a really neat, very beautiful thing to take in. We also have then these interactive drafting table kiosks with an application called Eyes on Earth, which you can actually play with on your own computers. And what Eyes on Earth allows you to do is explore some of the data sets that these same missions that you just saw flooding down. Interactively, you can visualize them as like little heat maps on a 3D globe that you can pinch and zoom and then animate through time and learn more about the individual satellites. But the real pièce de résistance is the hyperwall. So we call this Earth Mission Control. The idea comes from actually Administrator Nelson released a blog post about, I think, 2 or 3 years ago, where he had this vision for just like in the Apollo era, there was mission control where you could see all of the information you needed to be informed about what this, this massive task that they were undertaking would require, and you could make decisions with it all. He envisioned the same thing here at NASA, where you could take all of the Earth's, vital signs and put them in one place so that you can go and see, how are we doing? What is going on? What are the problems that we're facing? Really communicated in a compelling and beautiful way, as I hope I'll convince you. So we had a famous visitor. Nobody told me Bill Nye was coming to visit. Otherwise, I would have been there to chant, Bill, Bill. No, was not on my calendar. But he did show up and pose for a photo op pointing at the El Nino oscillation. So that was exciting. And here I want to give you just a flavor for the content. So if you pause for a second, I'll just let you take in and let the information be beamed directly into your brains. You'll get an idea of some of the stuff that comes up on our hyperwall. So hopefully you're seeing sort of 3 categories of content. There are these clear dashboards. There are narrated stories, which will come up in just a second here, where there's a person, kind of like a documentarian on the field. And then what we call beauty pieces, like what Bill Nye was pointing at, like this. And we envision beauty pieces as being a bit of a palate cleanser because a lot of the information is very dense. And we want people to be able to also just kind of appreciate the like kind of magnificent awe of what we're able to learn about the Earth and walk away with more of a connection to the planet and a connection to their role in protecting it. So we have a couple of these different beauty pieces that we put in that are really just supposed to watch and appreciate. There are these narrated stories that kind of do a deep dive into specific topics. So this one in particular was about improvements in air quality in Washington, D.C. This was about hurricanes and how remote sensing allows us to track and predict them. And this one is pretty famous within the team. So that's Farmer Dwayne. He actually came to the opening. He's a real farmer who, that's where my irrigation example comes from. He actively relies on NASA data to determine how many gallons of water he needs to be irrigating his field with. I think it's something like 2 million gallons of water he saves per year by keeping track using NASA data. And then there are the dashboards that really fulfill that vision for an Earth mission control. And these dashboards are categorized thematically. So we have dashboards that we try and update in near real time that, I'll try and pipe data that's within the last 10 minutes to the hyperwall that have like a very broad focus. Maybe it's just Earth imagery, or maybe it's, you know, kind of like what the most recent, they're called night lights or black marble imagery looks like, sometimes used to track power outages. There are the ones that are updated more daily. So this will be things like the sea surface temperature or the land surface temperature. There are things, and so that's a little bit more narrow. And then there are things that will really only update, once a year when like sort of these broad summary statistics are released about kind of how we did that year. So those are more focused. So things like, okay, we're talking specifically about greenhouse gases here. And then sometimes we'll invest a lot of time and effort into producing very high quality visualizations of a specific data set that is extremely focused so that we can tell a very specific story. So here we're talking about carbon dioxide and how different sources and sinks contribute to where it's coming from and where it's going. Now, I mentioned Brenda and Michael, who are core EIC team members, but this is a huge community effort. So this is a good chunk of the 20 or so SVS members that make this whole thing possible. Here's me, Michael, and Brenda, somehow evenly spaced. I don't think we planned that. Evenly spaced out in front of the Earth Information Center. I guess I mentioned the four features of the Earth Information Center that were data focused. The fifth feature that people love to take pictures with is this retro NASA logo, the NASA worm. And yeah, with just a little bit of time, I think that I have left, if I'm keeping track, I want to tell a little bit about Earth.gov. So Earth.gov is the virtual home of the Earth Information Center. And I'm currently working on an application that allows you to explore some of the Hyperwall content online in situ right there without having to come visit us, though there's also information about how to come visit us if you'd like to do that, along with places where we'll be putting user stories like Farmer Dwayne's of how this data is being used, and an interactive data exploration and analysis application so that you can actually access the data sets that I was talking about earlier and do just a little preliminary data analysis. So you can expect, so we're working with Esri, who is a very famous GIS mapping company, to put something out very soon, hopefully by the end of this year. What I think is just this beautiful interactive application that takes some of the Visualization Studio's high fidelity renders and allows you to access the underlying data underneath it. So this is actually a video that plays when you can see how the particulate matter larger than 2.5 microns is moving around the Earth. And then what this application will allow you to do is see how that changes over time in certain areas. Over the next year, we're planning on making available almost 100 data sets categorized into 9 themes that are our focus areas for the Earth Information Center, spanning all sorts of Earth science topics like air quality, agriculture, biodiversity, disasters, sustainable energy, greenhouse gases, sea level rise, water resources, and wildfires. And we're hoping to include data sets that aren't just like immediate, but also have longer term historical baselines so that you can provide context and also include model data for the future if we're able to provide it. And with that, I have reached the end of my prepared slides. Looking at the time, I think we have tons of time to have a conversation. And I'd really love to hear y'all's questions or get feedback or just hang out. Maybe you can hear my dog whining, so she can join in too. But thank you.
Alex, Alex, thank you so, so much. It was a great presentation. I really appreciate it. And we already do have some questions in the chat, and we'll get to those in a second. And if you're in the room, this is going to be your time to ask a question live with your microphone on. All you need to do in order to do that is raise your hand, and there's Zoom just did a little update. So normally it used to be a little globe, actually appropriately, with a plus sign on it. Now I think it's under something that says react, which has sort of a heart. If you want to raise your hand, we'll help you turn your microphone on to ask a question. And Alex, one of the reasons that I was so interested in your talk is because we here at We All Count have used this, like your information, your data sets quite extensively. And I think that it's such a valuable resource that not everybody knows about. We have, for example, when we were working on a refugee crisis, we used some spatial data about refugee crossings, because sometimes that can be seen from your satellites, and we can get like real-time counts on what's happening at various refugee crossings. Of course, not a perfect exact count of people, but a good enough estimate that we could more effectively deploy resources. Another thing that we've used your data for is when we were working in Kenya and Rwanda with also the agricultural sector. One of the real problems that exists in those two countries at the time that we were working was that they didn't have the access. That farmer, I forget the farmer's name, who's your farmer's name?
Farmer Dwayne.
Farmer Dwayne, right? Like in the US, they have pretty good access to like this kind of digital stuff. But if you're a farmer in Kenya, you really also need to figure out like how to deploy your very, very scarce amount of water. And so we were working to trying to get your information that Farmer Dwayne can also get access to farmers in Kenya. And then the last thing we were using your data for, well, not the last thing I'll talk about is we do a lot of work in Bangladesh, place that I love very much. And they have a lot of impacts from climate change in terms of the mangroves and changes in salinity and changes in who can farm and who has access to livelihoods. And so it's been incredibly helpful for us to have access to this resources, these resources. They have really helped us understand things that were not, I think we might have lost Alex. Is that possible? Oh, good. You're back. Okay, great. Okay, good. So one of the questions that I got, somebody direct messaged me in the chat, which is, can you either show us on a website or just tell us like how to find some of the data sets and visualizations that we can use?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the answer is right now, no. Yes.
Cool.
So I will show you what we currently have made available is so on earth.gov, if I can find my share again. On earth.gov, we have a little data catalog of about 5 data sets. And so these data sets, you can come in and you can explore and I have to touch base with our engineers. Somewhere in there, I might have told them we did not want the API endpoint shown.
Mhm.
From here, you can interactively, and you can pan around and look at different times. So this is GeoGlam agricultural data talking about
Yeah.
crop conditions and whether it's like the growing season or if these crops are doing well or not. So this is where you will come, I hope,
Hmm.
soon, very
Okay.
soon. We're in talks about with the data engineering team um, here at NASA and with our federal partners about how we can start to expose some of these data sets. We're also home, I should have mentioned, to the Greenhouse Gas Center. So the
Mm.
Greenhouse Gas Center is another interagency partnership, and they have a whole lot of data sets that are
Mhm.
specifically about greenhouse gases. So the answer to the question is Earth.gov. This is the whole goal. And the frustrating answer is that it's just not quite ready.
Mhm.
Just not quite ready.
Okay, that's no problem. We can keep people updated. Thank you for sharing that. Tabuda, raise your hand. Hey, go ahead. Great to see you.
Mhm. Oh, sorry, my camera. Hi, thank you so much. I'm Tanis, actually. That's the my first initial last name. I forgot to change it. But thank you for this presentation and for liberating all this data. I think it's awesome. My questions, I also see some in the chat that may be kind of related, but I'm curious, like how you decide the products and visualizations that you create. So
Mhm.
and like whether you do UX testing, user design experience, like how are you sort of determining whether the products and visualizations that you're making are both, like you say, supporting especially like justice issues. Like I really liked that part that
Mhm.
you're working with them. And I guess like I'm curious about, yeah, the governance of like the decisions to release new products and tools and visualizations, and whether, you know, there, like how does that decision making get made in terms of whether you're going to focus on a particular equity group or
Sure.
concern like that, and just the process. Yeah, that would be great if you could
Yeah, so there's a lot of steps to the process. So and different parts go through like different levels of review or suggestion or what have you. So what I will say to answer your first question about user experience testing. So we did recently partner with, I think the company's name is called 95% or something like this. And we actually had people come into the space and experience it. They gave them like local surveys, they did focus groups, and gave us a lot of really useful feedback about whether the stories that we were trying to tell were even landing, right? So that's not answering the questions like, okay, well, who decides the stories we're trying to tell? But I can say that that was a new experience for the studio and one that I think was very valuable and one that I hope that we continue doing. Um, so that's what I'll say first. Um, who decides what stories we're telling? So we have 9 thematic areas that I read from the slide at you. And our goal at the moment is to just achieve like full coverage of each of these areas so that we're giving some idea of just even what there is. Um, and so that's kind of guiding the data visualizations that we're making. It's like, okay, we need to start thinking about sea level rise. Can we start making some sea level rise visualizations? And then we partner with NASA, the Office of Communications, specifically the Earth Science Division. We'll go over a lot of the proposed content that we put together and then help us refine it, retarget it. In particular, for the narrated stories, there's a lot of effort that goes into, so there are video producers that are like the documentarians that will be in those videos that go on location and like shoot actual footage, and then they'll make pitches for what content should be going up on the wall. And then those pitches are reviewed both by the Earth Information Center leadership. So I didn't mention the programmatic aspect of the Earth Information Center, and there's a lot of support there. In addition to the visualizers ourselves, who are really just more like oh, you need us to take this data and make something beautiful out of it. We can do that. Um, the programmatic leadership will review that and then pass it up the chain through NASA communications and get feedback about like, oh no, this topic is like too elitist. This is not actually reaching out to like the same people that we want. It's like, oh, okay, this is about like micro brew coffee or something. It's like this is not the group of people that we're trying to reach. And give that feedback. And so the producers are able to ideate in that way and receive feedback. Yeah, and then for the data visualizations themselves, thankfully the studio is given mostly the freedom to just create what we think will tell the story once we've partnered with the producers or there's a specific point that we're trying to make. As we're seen kind of as the experts with the data and know what there is at NASA. And we reach out to some of our federal partners so that they can help inform what data sets they're able to provide.
I really
We have
like
a,
that, and
yeah,
I really loved your beauty stories and or your
yeah,
beauty
thank you.
things. I think that was brilliant, and I do like the way that you showed that you both dashboard and narrations and the beauty stories. I feel like that was a really um, useful for other data visualizers to take advantage of that idea because I thought that was beautiful. So thank you again.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you so much. And on the topic of people who've already been inspired by the beautiful visuals, we have a few people who've asked, do you have suggestions on people who, for courses, for people who want to get better at data visualization, coupled with, I'll just do a two-part question. Do you use almost exclusively proprietary tools? And is the data possibly like interoperable with like Tableau and stuff like that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So in terms of courses, one thing that really kind of changed my perspective on how I do data visualization was just the concept of storytelling with data. And columnist Bomber Knaflick does, I think, a really great job in her textbook, Storytelling with Data, that can help introduce the concept. And then there's like, I think the Storyteller's Guide to Data Visualization that recently came out that I think is a more detailed one. Um, that I think I would highly recommend, and just in terms of like just reframing the way that you approach data visualization, not from like a technical aspect, but from more of a like, what are we doing here? Like, what are we even trying to communicate? Like, and how can we do that better? In terms of the tools, it kind of depends on the visualization itself. For the most part, like the very beautiful things that you'll see that are like these animated visualizations, we use a tool called Houdini. In addition to, so Houdini is like a scene building engine, kind of like Blender. And then unlike Blender, it doesn't come with its own renderer. So we use a renderer provided by Pixar, actually. So we use the same rendering engine that Pixar does. So I think our tagline for many years was like, scientific data Hollywood graphics or something like that. Those things are available. I would not call them necessarily proprietary, but there's a license, that you got to pay to be able to use that. And then, a lot of the interactive stuff that I'll work on is all open source. So I'll be using things like Leaflet or D3JS and et cetera to create some of the more online web appy stuff.
Great, super useful. And we will, because I know that there's a lot of terms flying around, we will link to all of those resources in the place. I'm just gonna, this is my time where I'm gonna re-put in the resources that we're discussing here, and the recording will all go in the We All Count Data Equity Community Forum. So you can find all those links without having to kind of scroll through this chat. And you can also share this with other people that you might want to. And I think we have time for one more question, which is, And this might actually, Alex, might not be a question for you, but maybe you could point us in the direction of who this is a question for, which is if we're working on a project where we think we could either make use of the data, or we want to put in a request for, like, we would really like to see such and such a thing on the, it's not called the Wonder Wall. What is it called?
The wonder wall.
What is it called?
It is a wonder wall. The hyper wall.
Hyperwall,
Yes.
hyperwall, right, right. Where would we make that request, or talk to somebody about stories that we want to see, or encourage our clients? You know, there's lots of people who
Yeah.
work with very marginalized, oppressed groups of people who would love to see themselves on the hyperwall or see their things.
Sure.
What's kind of the communication aspect of this? And I understand that's not your role, so
But
if you can help us
yes,
know
I
whose role
can.
it is.
So the right way to go about it is that on earth.gov, we have a great big contact us button. And you know, we recently learned how to see the stuff that was coming in through that. That would maybe a little too recently. um, so there were
Better late
some
than never.
outdated messages that we unfortunately needed to apologize for. But
Yeah.
now we are checking it regularly. And so that is where I would encourage anybody that has any feedback to reach out and let us know if there's something you think we could benefit from or that you might benefit from.
Great. We will make note of that. Also, we're getting a large number of requests for the storytelling with data website. So I'm just going to pop that into the chat.
Yes.
It's pretty well
Yeah.
known. It's won a lot of awards. And Cole actually might be a great person to have as a
Oh,
future talking data equity guest.
I love Cole. I was lucky enough to attend one of her master classes, and I highly recommend it if you have the opportunity. And she also, I don't know, I'm just going to plug Cole. She also does consulting, and you know, she can come in and do trainings for you and your team, you know, sort of thing. No, Cole's amazing, and
Yeah.
I really recommend it as a good primer. And then the other one that I mentioned is this data storyteller's handbook.
Oh, perfect.
So I didn't quite nail the title, so I wanted to try and pick it up. So yeah, you can find that where books are sold.
Fantastic. Okay, I think we are going to leave it there for today so that everybody who has a back-to-back meeting doesn't have to flip from one Zoom to the next. You have a little humanity break. And a little bit of housekeeping. We are not here next Friday. I, as some of you know, have been taking canoeing lessons for a few months, and I'm going on my first ever canoeing trip in the beautiful Algonquin Park in the north part of where I live. So I will be on a canoe. So I will not be here next Friday. Hopefully I will be on a canoe if things go well. But we are meeting in 2 weeks, and our special guest that day is going to be John Schwabish, who also does a lot of work with data viz. His data viz that he's going to talk about with us is more about racism and things to try and do or try and avoid when doing data viz involving data with people. So it's a little bit different than the work that Alex is doing, but very, very intersected. So again, I want to thank you, Alex. I was so excited to have you here, and I really am over the moon to hear that the whole website is coming together, that
Yes.
this really valuable and unusual sets of data are going to become available to people who don't work at Pixar or
Yes.
the federal government of the United States.
Yes.
And I'm really grateful for your work, and also so grateful that you took time out of your schedule and Pepper's schedule to
Yes.
come and be with us. And also to everybody else who attends, if this is your first time, please come again. The Zoom link doesn't change, but the topics change wildly with the common theme of data equity. So we're going to leave it at that. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. And thanks again, Alex.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, bye.